like that pragmatic approach of turning garbage into gold, I think is where the value is. I think that's what kind of like tickles my engineering mind, being able to like take something that's undervalued or unvalued. People are just selling them for, as paperweights, and being able to take it and get free heat out of it. I think that's immensely powerful.
Welcome back to the Compass Mining Podcast. My name is Jarrett, and today I'm joined by Toine from 256 Heat or 256 Heat. Toine, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thanks for hopping on. This is like one of the butterfly effects of the heat punk movement that happened or started. It started long before Denver, but I think it was kind of crystallized in Denver, and you were able to attend that. And from that, I had seen your content before, but I was like, he should come on the podcast if he would like to. So thanks for taking the time. We've talked about this off mic, but I think it's salient to talk about on mic, and that is where you are located. Before we get into 256 Heat, I think where you're located lends itself to 256 Heat.
Yeah, no, it really does. A lot of the products and services that I've come up with were a direct result of me trying to solve problems in my own jurisdiction. Some of these problems are pretty specific to me here in Ontario, but other ones are pretty applicable to many jurisdictions, like, being able to deal with on-demand or, adjustable pricing, electricity and things like that. So I'm near Toronto, Ontario. A little background is we have relatively inexpensive power. It's all kind of hydroelectric and nuclear mix. So our rates are set with like 30-year terms, and with the Canadian dollar weakening versus the US, it's nominally it's pretty attractive to mine here, especially if you can curtail. We have a 2.8 cent per kilowatt hour Canadian overnight rate, which is one of the best rates you can get. So if you can curtail during peak pricing, it's a pretty competitive mining environment, and it's very cold here. It's still in the minuses. So we have a pretty extended heating season. When you marry those two things together, it's pretty attractive for Bitcoin mining for heat use. So that's kind of the background.
Yeah, and just to confirm that's 2.8 cents Canadian?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit more when you add, there's a lot of fees on top, like taxes and delivery, but it certainly helps with, keeping mining competitive and allowing you to use older hardware and still break even or mine at a slight profit while you're heating your home. So huge incentives there.
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to confirm that because that is very, very cheap. What's the actual, and I haven't looked at this, what's the CAD to the USD right now? Is it about 90, 85%? What is it?
No, we hit 70 cents almost on the dollar. Yeah, we've been sliding for about 5 years, and it's good for someone like me. I have a lot of clients in the US, and like I said, our electric rates are kind of set. So if you can diversify your income with Bitcoin or US dollars, but obviously better Bitcoin, it allows you to take advantage of that. It's almost like your prices kind of go down forever denominated in Bitcoin, but even in US dollars, your prices are going down if that's what you're, using as your ruler for electricity pricing.
The geo arbitrage of currency is something that every Bitcoiner does, no matter where they are. If you are making the US dollar, for example, and then you're saving in Bitcoin, as the way I see it, then you are arbitraging the difference of currency. As I feel like I'm Jeff Booth now, but as one goes up over time, as you've just said, your stack will get bigger in the dollars, for example, or in the Canadian or in the pesos. And so with that said, and you've just, I didn't realize it was at 70 cents. In my head, it was like 85 cents at the lowest, which means we're in a very interesting time in the world geopolitically, because there's very serious tensions, probably not between Canadians and Americans, quote unquote, like between you and I, but between the leaders of those two countries there are. And normally when a currency goes down, and I didn't think we were going to go here, but if you'll just indulge me, normally when a currency goes down to another one in a neighboring, and you share a border, tourism goes up, right? So I actually expect Canadian tourism to go up while the US tourism goes down, not only for geopolitical reasons, but also because if it's more expensive for them to travel there, I could see Canadians going to other places in the hemisphere. Very interesting. With that said, even in that last 5-year shift, and I'm not sure how old 256 Heat is, we will get into that, but have you noticed more interest since you've been in mining from the US to Canada?
I'm not really keeping track of that kind of thing. I know I have more clients in the US than I do in Canada,
Okay.
which, if you look at the incentives, it doesn't make sense. But if you look at the market, it's a huge market south of the border compared to, 35 million people up here in Canada. So, most of the people that I can help are west and south of me. So, yeah, it just kind of happens that way with just geography. But, maybe just answering your question a little bit, I think maybe there are some incentives for larger companies to, create hosting or sites here in Canada. They could be partnering with electrical infrastructure or like I know there's a really large mining operation at the Niagara Falls Portlands, like right where the electricity is made. So because we have so much kind of like stranded hydroelectric, there are deals to be made, I think, in these areas. And I think there's some opportunities for, ambitious miners that are looking for low cost and even, if they're really creative, they can figure out a way to do low cost and deliver heating. So they're kind of double dipping. They're creating Bitcoin and they're selling heat as a product. That's the dream.
That is the dream. Okay, let's dive now into 256 heat. And thank you for giving me a little chance to talk, because I always think it's interesting how the macro can influence the micro. And the micro is definitely what you're doing with 256 heat, what other people are doing in the heat punk movement. Talk to me about 256 heat. When was it founded? When did you basically decide, okay, I have this idea. It needs to not just be something I'm talking about on Telegram or on X. I need to get the website. I need to go. I need to make this full time. This is the moment.
Yeah. Well, the kind of the seeds were planted when I started mining at the end of 2021, early 2022, I think is when I got my first Bitcoin miner. Quickly realized they make a lot of heat and noise. So, realized that I couldn't just be running these things on the kitchen counter, in their current form, I guess. And, that led to, the acquisition of a mining property where basically, it was like a lab. I was tinkering. I was taking things apart. I was updating firmware. I was changing the fans. I was, ducting things into other places, diverting duct routes. Like it was, I put basically all of my engineering experience at work on that property and with those kind of test miners. And because it's 3 hours away from my home, I had to figure out some solutions for how do you mine remotely in a effective manner that doesn't take up all your time, but it's also reliable and reachable and all of these things. So once I figured, it took a couple of years. Once I figured those things out, it kind of coincided at the end of 2023 with, I used to work in architectural viz. I did 3D rendering for builders and architects to sell kind of pre-sales for condos, mostly condos in Vancouver of all places. After interest rates rose considerably, that whole business kind of tanked. The company I worked for tanked. And I said, what, if there's a time to do what I really want to do, to, figure out how to deliver the most amount of benefits, the most amount of people. That's kind of been my motto. And that's the people who are most successful in life are the ones who are doing that well. So I said, okay, I think I can take what I've learned and create some products and services that could really help people. I think that was beginning of 2024. I started kind of designing and tinkering and figuring out the Wi-Fi PDU switch product, which is kind of a key component to the systems I install. It basically allows you to remotely access the miner, reboot it, use Wi-Fi temperature sensors to dictate when there's power going to the miner, when there isn't. Some safety redundancies. They're magnetic temperature sensors. You can stick them right to the chassis of the miner. And if there's any elevated temps, you can have the thing cut off. So that was the big challenge, trying to figure out how to domesticate these Bitcoin miners so you can bring them inside the house and run them. The most typical application is ducting them into the furnace so that you can leverage existing HVAC infrastructure to distribute that heat. And there's a side benefit. The miners run extremely efficiently because if you duct into the return plenum, it's a vacuum. So it's not only a fan pushing air past the chips, your HVAC system is pulling it away. So there's some safety there because if your fan dies, your chips, their stock will bing to 90. They slowly reach that temperature and then the firmware shuts them down. So I was just looking for synergies with how I can make the system as simple, but I'm pragmatic. I want to make it as cost effective. I want it to ROI as fast as possible. So that was my challenge, and that's what I've been working on. Every system I build is a little bit better than the last one, it seems. So, learning the whole way, and then just kind of taking steps to scale and to kind of focus more on residential and products. Actually, in the summer, I'll be looking at building more products because heater installs aren't going to be as lucrative coming into like May, June, July.
Yeah. Wow. You just said so much, and I want to unpack. I want to definitely dive deeper into the product. But before we do that, I want to ask a couple things. One, what was the first miner you started with?
Oh, good question.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary services. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success.
My very first miner was a WhatsMiner M30S++. Weird name, but that thing was awesome. It was super heavy, super loud was my first impression. But when I started mining in 2021, I think one of those was returning more Bitcoin than like 4 modern machines do right now, just because of the difficulty. But that was a great first machine, and it was awesome to learn on. The thing was, I probably put it in some environments that were too warm or whatever, and it just kept running. So yeah, I loved it. It was an awesome unit.
Yeah, I was so curious which one you started with. And yes, unfortunately, what you said is true about the mining economics. I actually just posted something on Compass's X that I think we're at 100. Let me pull the exact number up, but I think we're at 800. And pulling it up, 828 exahash right now. And the next difficulty, and the difficulty is at 113T, excuse me. And the next difficulty adjustment's plus 14.
Yeah.
So by the time you're listening to this, which is going to be hopefully on March 25th, the mining economics aren't great, but that's okay. Next question I wanted to ask was, talk to me about your 3-hour away Bitcoin mining lab. What does this look like? If you have photos, we can inject them in the post here. We can put them up. But if you wouldn't mind sharing, what does that look like? Like how much land? In my head, it's like a 1/4 acre less or 1/8 of an acre, and you've just got a shed or something that has electricity, and you're just in there tinkering. Or, is it more than that? Can you go out there and stay the night? Is there a cot? Do you have a bathroom? Like, break that down, because I think for myself, and we spoke about this off mic, when I'm stateside, the electricity that we have in my area is like 23 cents a kilowatt. I just can't mine there. Yeah. So I would need to set up something like this, like a satellite situation like you've done, and do that. So if you could speak about that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So it's just south of Algonquin Park, which is a big provincial park in Ontario, literal middle of nowhere. I think it's got some of the best views of the night sky because there's such little light pollution because there's no one around. It's a 1/2 acre or just over a 1/2 acre. And it had a couple structures on the property when I bought it. It had something like 600. Yeah, it had 600 amps of power. And in the old barn that's on the property, there was an outlet every 6 feet. I thought maybe they were growing cannabis here or something at one point. And when it became legal, the market got flooded and just wasn't cost effective anymore, wasn't returning enough money. So I get to benefit there. And oddly, the other, when the cannabis market fails, 256 heat kind of wins because the fans that I use are AC Infinity fans, and they're an 8-inch oversized kind of fan for mining. But they were designed for like cannabis cultivation. These things are like so overbuilt for mining. They can run like at 100% duty for 7 years. They're ultra quiet. So it's one of these things where if you can repurpose things in a clever way, you can get away with it. But back to the mining property, there was a cabin on site as well, which was livable. It had well dug and power and running water and everything. I put in a bathroom. There was kind of just like a shower, but not a bathroom. So I installed the bathroom myself there. And then in 2020, late 2021, early 2022, I think it was late 2021. I put in a shed for mining. So I rented the excavator, dug the trench, put the Tech 90 direct burial cable, triple redundant Ethernet cable, got everything set up, and started running with stock fans. And I didn't like having fires at night with that sound, so I started getting things quieter with these AC Infinity fans and trying to figure out how to program them to auto shut down and auto start up when the power was expensive and then first cheap. And then I started drying my firewood with the exhaust heat. It's pretty wild, actually. It attracts animals to the property now because it's heat, but not a lot, like almost no noise. So in the summertime, the deer show up behind the shed because I have like 18 kilowatts of heat just getting pumped straight out, and it gets the flies off the deer. So I catch them on the cameras. And then in the summertime, the other deer and bears and things will come and warm up by the shed. There's like 3 feet of snow up there right now, but there's like a 20-foot radius behind the shed where it's just green grass because there's so much heat coming out. So yeah, I usually put all my miners in there in the summer, and the winter I take one, put it in the cabin. I have a couple at my home here that heat the whole house. So they're kind of like, these miners are kind of like mobile heaters where I deployed them where it makes the most sense at the time. If I can use the heat, then that's what I'm doing with them. If not, then I use to dry firewood or whatever it is. Maybe I'll have a petting zoo in the future where the animals are warmed up by Bitcoin miners. Who knows? That's kind of looks like where it's going.
Wow. I told you off mic too that my sister has property and lives up in Vermont, and it's just a different world up there because the thermal camera that they have, or the sensor camera that they put around their property, they're like bears have come up on their porch, massive bears, like bears you would not want to run into on the trail. Mm-hmm. And are you getting the same thing? All kinds of just wildlife are just drawn to the fact that there's this crazy amount of heat when it's negative 20?
I think so. Like I'm getting weird. Like I got marmots and coyotes and wolves and deer. And usually around this time in the spring, I get a few bears. Every year for the last 3 years in like March, April, I get a bear and he comes and sits down in front of the camera and he usually munches on, some flowers or something. And then he walks away. But it's funny to see him every year. He gets a little bigger. Like the first year he looked like a big dog, and now he's like 400 or 500 pounds, it looks like. So, yeah, it's, there's lots of wildlife up there. I'm surrounded by like 600 acres of like municipally protected wilderness with like an old growth forest. So you can walk around and see crazy looking mushrooms. And I just love the area. I went up there to mine, but now I go up like once a month, maybe even twice a month to, take the kids, enjoy it, camping, stargazing. There's waterfalls all over the place. It's just gorgeous. Love it up there.
Well, that didn't sound like an invitation, but if I am up that way, I will make sure we go because it sounds wonderful.
If you're around here, man, you're welcome to come by.
Okay, anytime. Amazing. And I do want to get into the products, but everything you say just spurs on new questions and just curiosity. Can you break down the miners that you have in the cabin for the heat on the property, the miners that you have mining currently in the shed that is now turning into a public petting zoo, and then the ones that you have in your home? Because I think that's going to give us also some insight into then we can go right into products.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it kind of, I'm going to go into a case study that just happened on the weekend. But I'll start with how I decide where I allocate the miners. The newer miners go in the shed and they just are targeting maximum uptime. The older miners are the ones I like to use for heating because the way my systems work is the warmer it gets in the space that you're heating, the more they're going to programmatically downclock. And what that does is it creates like an asymptotic heating curve. If you're looking at ambient temperature, let's say you want 22 degrees Celsius in the house, it'll asymptotically approach that 22 degrees, which allows you to do two really important things with mining. It allows you to, it's prioritizing heat. So it allows you to lower your wattage as the duty cycle increase, like as the time goes on. This allows you to mine more efficiently. And by increasing your duty cycle, you're not going to be cutting on and off as often. So your chip temps are going to be a little bit more stable. You're not putting extra stress on your relay or your contactor in the switch so that you're not cutting on and off all the time. But like the main thing really is you could take like an old S19J Pro 104 terahash, which is supposed to be like 30 joules per terahash by default. When you run it at like 70, 80 terahash, you're getting like S19K Pro or S19 XP numbers. So something that was, not even close to profitable at like what's called 10 cent US per kilowatt hour power now becomes actually just swings slightly into profitability. So you go from, paying a very small amount to heat your house to getting paid to heat your house. And when you reach that threshold, it's like a hope that you unlock it's like a life hack. It feels like you can let your kids, they leave the door open. You're like, I don't care, whatever, let the cold air in. Let's just mine more Bitcoin. Like it's not going to cost you anything. So that's how I kind of decide where I allocate the miners. The newer stuff just targets ROIing as fast as possible. Like my S21s are all in the shed, and my XPs as well. And then like the K Pros and J Pros, I even have a vanilla S19 that I'm using to heat my house here. And I can get into that. So I found one for $300 and something Canadian, I think it was. And, that's like 2 months of mining revenue to break even on. So I had to buy it just to see if it would work. Took me an hour, got the shrouds on it, put the fan on it, ducted into the furnace. And now it's like $150 Canadian of electricity to run it. And it's making $150 Canadian worth of Bitcoin per month right now at these prices with this, difficulty. So, like that pragmatic approach of turning garbage into gold, I think is where the value is. I think that's what kind of like tickles my engineering mind, being able to like take something that's undervalued or unvalued. People are just selling them for, as paperweights, and being able to take it and get free heat out of it. I think that's immensely powerful.
That is absolutely immensely powerful. And can I ask how you personally then do the billing? So let's go with that example. It's 150 to heat the house, and you're going to get 150 out in Bitcoin in CAD. Are you then selling the Bitcoin month over month to cover that cost? Or are you saying, no, I'm going to keep the Bitcoin as I were buying the Bitcoin, and I'm just going to use my fiat currency to then cover the cost of the electricity?
Are you talking about me personally, or
you personally?
Yeah, me personally. So me personally, the mined Bitcoin is no KYC Bitcoin, which is no sell Bitcoin. I look at it as a way to take my energy bill and turn it into long-term savings. That's how I look at it. Now, not everyone is a Bitcoiner, including my clients. So some clients like to sell down every month. Some of them like to sell down based on rules for whether Bitcoin is overvalued or undervalued. You really have the choice. But personally, that's my long-term savings fund, and the heat is just free as a result. That's how I look at it.
Cool. Yeah, that's how I think I would look at it too. And then for your clients that are saying, okay, I have a $150 bill and the Bitcoin came in this month at 180, so I'm in quote surplus. How much hands-on, and this is something that I've talked with Tyler Stevens about also, not on mic, but it's like there's so many parts to then having that right there, where a client who maybe isn't a Bitcoiner or isn't as Bitcoin native now has the 180 and they want to sell it. A couple things there. Like, where are they selling it to? How are they dealing with taxes? Is it cold wallet, hot wallet? Like, I just feel like there's so much that kind of needs some education or some support there. So how are you doing that in a way that's going to allow you to scale, 256 heat?
I kind of do like a menu option with clients. Like I see where they're at and I see what their goals are, and then I'll tailor it to them. Like some clients, I don't even put like, they'll just want they'll send their funds direct to exchange and sell every month, and they never hold a balance. Other ones, they like to, sell a portion of it and, cover their costs, but hold on to Bitcoin. Many clients don't have wallets. Many clients have wallets. Some are super sophisticated and have, Lightning and hardware wallets, and that's much easier. It takes a lot less time to get these people set up. But I do an introductory call with all my clients, and that kind of helps me gauge, how I orient the products to them. Everything is programmable. Everything is, you can tailor it to someone who's a hardcore Bitcoiner, or you can tailor it to someone who, in Canada, we have an app called ShakePay. It's what I use. And you can just sell it every month, or you can load it up on your, sell to Canadian dollars, load it up on a credit card and buy gas with it, like whatever you want. Bitcoin is money good, right? It's 24/7. It's real because you can exchange value for value any time of the day, any time of the night, 365. So, it's how you relate to Bitcoin is a personal thing, and that's every client is different in that regard.
Yeah, cool. I just think that that's great. How many, and we are going to get to the products, I promise. You just keep saying really great stuff here. How many clients, if you are okay sharing, and you could say more than 100, more than 500, if you don't want to give the exact number, but I'm curious how many clients you're currently supporting.
So I started doing installs in September of last year because that's when it started to get cold around here. I think I've done 28 or 29 installs so far. Most of them are in the States. So I, pre-assemble, test, set up everything, and then I'll disassemble in parts that make sense, ship it to the client. And my goal was kind of like the IKEA strategy. You should just need like a screwdriver to put everything together. And, my products come with a few hours of consult video, phone or telephone, and I walk them through the installation, set up the payouts, set up the pools, and it's been great. It's been super rewarding. Very few issues considering how complex some of these things can be. So it was really cool to like build these things for myself, figure out what the best way to do it is, figure out what was the most bomb-proof kind of, idiot-proof kind of foolproof method, and then, deploy that to the public.
It sounds great. So let's dive right into the products, and I'm on your website, and let's go ahead and shill that if we can. 256 heat or 256 heat. Looks like you have, and so can you walk me through the products that are all these products your products, or are some of these ones that you are selling kind of white labeled? Like walk me through, because you've got a lot of products here for only being up around a year to get a product to market. And, as you said, you've gone through the iterative process. So I see some Wi-Fi PDU switches. I see 3 Wi-Fi PDU switches, and I see a Bridge Pro Hub and a temperature humidity sensor. Can you walk me through how all this kind of comes together? So let's do this in a real good hypothetical. I want to start, I have a shed, I have a property in Vermont, and I'm like, Toine, I need your help. Get me up and running. I've got S19, and I just want that to help heat my house. How would we go ahead and do this?
So yeah, that's great. Lots of clients do have hardware in hand, which is awesome. That's typically the most expensive, like the mining hardware is the most expensive component in the bill. If you have that, then you're well on your way with regards to the cost per heating system. What I would do is I would look at your needs. A rule of thumb for me in that part of the world, at that latitude, is 1 miner per 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
The other thing I do is I look at your current energy price to see, is it even viable? Do you have a cheaper alternative? Like, are you on propane, natural gas, diesel, heating oil? These things all kind of help you score how viable this product would be for you. The other thing I would do is look at what kind of infrastructure currently exists by code since I think it's the 70s or 60s. Forced air HVAC systems are the building code, and almost every house in North America now has them. All new homes for sure have them. So, what I'll do is I'll design a system for your needs based on that criteria. I always thought overpowering a system is better than underpowering it, because here's the logic there. You can get a brand new S21, takes about, consumes about 3,500 watts, makes about 200 terahash. But you can also, the other thing you can do is you can get 2 S19J Pros for way less. If you run them flat out, they make a lot more Bitcoin. But the other thing is if you underclock them both, let's say you don't have a huge demand for heat, let's say it's an in-between season like spring or fall, you can run them at, 50% wattage, or even 1,200 watts each when they're, by default over 3,000 watts. And then you can knock that, you can, increase that efficiency. You can knock that watts per terahash metric down to something that's, more akin to like a miner that's a few $1,000s more than, the miner that you bought. It's a J Pro or even a vanilla S19. So that's kind of the goal, like oversize it so that you're good on the coldest day of the year, but have the ability to load match or demand match for all the seasons.
Yeah, I love that. And so I see you have 3 Wi-Fi PDU switches. Can you talk to me about the reason why you have 3 different models?
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
point
it's
out
good.
something that.
I this has to be said because so I'm developing a version 3, which is not out yet, but it's going to integrate all the functions of the PDU into the switch, so you don't need to run the switch into the PDU.
Mm.
The version 2, which is the CSA approved one, is I've run out of stock on those, and currently I'm selling the version 1, which I've been using for like a couple of years, and they're great. But I'm not building any more version 2s because I'm trying to get together components for a version 3. I'm looking for a couple little components, and that's why I haven't built them yet. And I've been extremely busy. But usually I do most of my R&D and stuff in the summer when the heating installs are falling off a little. So the version 1s are great. They work just like the version 2s, except they have some slightly different components, and they're not CSA approved. But I've been running them personally for a long time. And they're a little bit less expensive because you don't have as an expensive a case, and you don't have the same fuse setup, and a couple other little things. Obviously, the cost of inspection is built into the version 2. So, if you want the functionality and you want to get a good deal, I think the version 1 is it's available right now. I have stock of those, but that's kind of the reason I'm kind of going back and forth with the different versions, and until the version 3 is built and released. It's just kind of where I have to be for right now, unfortunately, in between versions.
That makes total sense. And I don't think it's a problem at all. And it shouldn't even be embarrassing. It's just like you're kind of in an iterative innovation stage. It is interesting to think about your business model, being that every year you have, I want to say, a bull and a bear. A bull being where you're doing all these installations because it's getting colder and people are really excited to heat their house. And then the bear just being, well, they say builders build in the bear. So it's like every summer you get to tinker and iterate and bring out new versions of the tech. Is that more or less accurate?
Yeah, the one I'm looking at this year is 3D printing. I already use a lot of 3D printed components. So the being able to kind of customize those, build that stuff in house. I have a design background. I'm really familiar with SolidWorks and Pro Engineer, so I can really 3D model stuff well and quickly. So it's like, okay, I just need a machine so I can tinker and do this some more. It's just, again, finding the time to do it probably will happen in the summer, and that's usually when I make all my kind of big development strides.
So you've got less than 50 clients right now, less than 50 people running 256 heat equipment. Not just beyond equipment. I want to say, I don't know if you have your own software, but I want to say like philosophy of house heating. They're in the network of 256 heat. What long-term is your goal here? Because with any small business, there's that point of kind of like diminishing returns, right? Where you're gonna be like, okay, and you've sat down and you're like, all right, Toine, if I do 500 installs, I'm going to be burning out because my team is going to have to grow this much to do that. And then at some point we're starting to eat, what does it look like? What's the scalability of this? I'm assuming that you're kind of a one-man show, but I don't know. That's my assumption, that you're a one-man show. Like what's the future? What's your ultimate goal here over the next 5 years? Because as we kind of spoke about off mic, I mean, if Bitcoin price explodes, the interest for these products is going to be through the roof because people are still going to need to heat their houses. They're going to want to get, as much access and exposure to the Bitcoin price action. So I feel like you're going to have too much work, right? So anyways, what is your future goals? What does that look like? And then aligned with that is, what does failure look like? If you thought about that as well.
Yeah, I definitely. So I think for the future, I'd love to get into like larger scale installations. As much as I love residential because you get to meet all kinds of cool Bitcoiners. I think there's, the economies of scale are so compelling with hash rate heating. If you can get into like, Amazon warehouses or greenhouses or anything where you're looking at, deploying quite a few Bitcoin miners, I think the business model changes a bit, and you have more viability for like a revenue business model, like a monthly revenue business model with those kinds of consumers, those kinds of clients. But yeah, I've been kind of stuck on the residential because I really love the self-sovereignty that like you can deliver to people when they start hash rate heating. They're not looking at the Bitcoin chart every day anymore. They're looking at, their mining pool, whether they hit a block or, it's cool to see someone get over number, go up and get onto what's the network doing, how does lightning work? Like this is kind of like an evolution for Bitcoiners. Try to, many get stuck on number, go up, but those who are a little bit more like engineering or technical minded, the network and the hardware is fascinating, and to kind of hash rate heating as like a gateway drug to get people into that is a really cool thing to see.
I could not agree with what you just said more. Just on anyone's Bitcoin journey, whenever they get to that point, and it's normally a cliff, and then they fall off, and then they realize that having no control is the most control. And this is a larger conversation, I'm sure, on like a therapy level. But once you don't care about the number and you're just like, how much Bitcoin can I get this week doing whatever I do, whether it's fiat mining because you're going to your 9 to 5 or you're mining Bitcoin, I think the conversation just shifts dramatically. And it's like a come to Satoshi moment, as I call it, for people. And they're like, I don't really care what the price is, What is something that the podcast can do for you? Where should people, go to learn more about 256 Heat, but besides the website, besides this conversation? Can they reach out to you? Do you have like 30-minute complimentary, let me talk to you about how this works, come talk with Toine hours, or what's the next step if anyone's interested in doing this? Because I think there's going to be people who are going to hear this and they're going to be interested, but it's like, in business, getting someone from the interest to the investment can be a bigger gap than I think we want it to be. Yeah.
Definitely the website has the contact for like an email, kind of shout out, reach out. And, there definitely is a 30-minute like complimentary, like just helping, me understand what the needs are, helps me cater. Like there's so many choices you can make when you're designing a system, from the miner to the fan, to the firmware, to how you run your cooling hardware, to where it's located, vertical orientation, horizontal orientation. All these things make a difference in what you're trying to accomplish. Filtering, like there's so many aspects. So me having a really good understanding of your criteria, what are you trying to accomplish? What's your electrical infrastructure? What's your internet infrastructure? What's your cost? What's your HVAC infrastructure? Where's your HVAC system located? Do you have power? Like there's so many little things that if I understand them, then I can design a system for you. And, typically what happens is after that call, I send out something called the scope of work document, which kind of outlines all the particulars, what's needed from you, the timeline, the components, the cost, payment schedule, everything. And if that looks good, then, we proceed. And, after an initial deposit, I basically send you out all the components you would need. And when they're received, we go through it box by box, set it up. Usually it's about, like if I'm doing it personally myself, it's like 1 or 2 hours. If I'm walking someone through it, 3 or 4, maybe 5 hours, depending on if it's a single unit, dual unit, where it's located, how complex the access is. But that's the typical kind of method for how I get to deliver these products. So the website's good. I've had a lot of people reach out on Twitter. Personal or private messaging on Twitter is another good way to do it, because I think most of the people that find me, they find me through my Twitter posts. I like to document my installs there. So I think that's how most people find me.
And is that on your own personal Twitter? I feel like that's on your own personal Twitter.
Yeah, right? I haven't set up a 256 Heat Twitter. I am like a one-man show. So, Toine is the 256 Heat Twitter for now. I try not to spend too much time with marketing, because I love building. It's not kind of it. It used to be my specialty with graphics, but I find it. I don't know. It's like you can really change certain words and images, and you can have really huge benefit there. And I need to spend more time on that because I see how it directly influences the business. And just to go back to, you said, did you think about failure? And yeah, like trying to take on too much is a route to failure, I think, for myself. For this to scale, I need to, start training and things. And I have started thinking about that because I really don't want to fail in this regard. And the cool thing about, most of these installs south of the border, so I'm instructing someone on how to do it. The cool thing about that is when you teach a man to fish instead of giving a man a fish, if there's a problem, usually the client is able to troubleshoot it themselves. Most of the time, a restart will suffice. Other times, they have to change the pool or whatever it is. But we go through those steps on install in that 4 to 6 hour installation day. So these clients essentially become capable installers after we're done the process. And a lot of the clients show their friends, look, I have a system that heats and pays for itself. They get interested, and then I can hire that client to do the install. So this is kind of one of the mechanisms I'm using for, on-site training and expanding kind of my reach. But that's scaling is tricky when you're a one-man show and, you're constantly updating and changing and improving and trying to figure out what the best components are. And, like that happens, like a few of my installs in September, they work slightly differently than how they do now. So I had to go back and individually address each of those clients, send them a few packages of some equipment and be like, okay, we'll do it like this from now because this will improve your, efficiency by X and your uptime by Y. And so it's an iterative process, but I think that like on-site training, having my clients, train themselves in assembly and operation is hugely valuable because then I can hire them to do those installs for their friends or family or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. In many ways, 256 Heat has like its own node network because anyone who's been a client is now part of keeping up your tech and honestly giving you invaluable feedback, priceless feedback to the tech to say, hey, you know what, this didn't work. What if you did it like this? And you're like, oh yeah, what if I did do it like that? I think getting things out, products out in front of people and getting them up is a really big challenge for anyone in Bitcoin mining, but especially in like the heat punk movement that is seeing the heat as like the first reward. And then, oh, it's great. You also get some Bitcoin on top of that, right? So I am going to go leave in this episode description the website and your X and any other links that you want to send me, we can put up as well. And we'll put those up. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you're following Cubs Mining on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. Toine, thank you once again for taking the time to hop in the pod and talk about 256 Heat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jarrett. Great to talk to you today.